Bullied at school and feeling neglected at home, 12-year-old Owen fills his days with thoughts of revenge against his tormentors and spends his nights observing the apartment complex's residents. His only friend is Abby, a mysterious girl who only emerges after dark. Stick around until the end to discover Owen's mother's past connection. Welcome to your daily dose of Movie Pill. Today, we will be looking at a 2010 horror romance movie titled Let Me In. Spoilers ahead, and let's get right in. In 1983, at a hospital in Los Alamos, New Mexico, a man with burns covering over 9.5% of his body is admitted. He is a suspect in a significant murder case, prompting the detective to approach him promptly. Despite the man's severe disfigurement preventing him from speaking, the detective devises a plan. He places a notepad and a pen on the bedside table, suggesting that confessing now could expedite the identification process. As the detective questions the man about cults and Satanism, the man's heart rate increases. Their conversation is interrupted by a nurse alerting the detective to an urgent phone call. Just as the injured man reaches for the pen, the detective departs to take the call. The man must be guilty. No other reason for the increased heart rate. The receptionist informs him that the man's young daughter had visited but left no contact details. Suddenly, a scream emanates from the man's room. When the detective investigates, he discovers that the man who was burned had jumped from the window after leaving a note on the notepad that read, "I'm sorry, Abby." Flashback to 2 weeks earlier. Owen, a 12-year-old boy, spends his time in the small front yard of his apartment, enjoying candy alone. When his divorced mother calls him in for dinner, he discreetly buries the candy wrappers in the snow before joining her. The dinner takes a tense turn when Owen's father calls, leading to a heated argument with his mother that leaves her in tears on the couch after they finish eating. No wonder now why Owen's parents are divorced. Later that evening, Owen takes a knife from the kitchen and practices threatening gestures with it while wearing a creepy mask. He sets the knife aside upon hearing noises outside and uses his telescope to spy on his neighbors. He observes Jack exercising and Larry and Virginia arguing, only to reconcile moments later. Owen is captivated by their interactions until Virginia notices him, prompting him to hide. However, Owen's curiosity is reignited when he hears a car parking outside. He peeks out the window to find the couple has disappeared, and a middle-aged man named Thomas and a young girl named Abby are moving into the apartment next door to him. For some inexplicable reason, Abby often walks around without shoes. The following morning, as Owen heads to school, he notices Abby's footprints in the snow. At school, Owen faces relentless bullying from Kenny and his gang. Whoa, why would Abby walk around barefoot in the freezing snow? Weird. First, Kenny shoots a spitball at him during class, and later they trap him in the locker after swimming lesson. The bullies mock him for not swimming, taunting him with names like Little Girl while striking him with a towel. They push him to the ground and subject him to a series of wedgies, only releasing him when Owen ends up wetting his pants. After school, Owen visits a store to purchase some candy and comes across a display of knives. Deciding to buy one, that evening he uses the knife to strike a tree in his yard, practicing menacingly. His practice is interrupted by Abby's sudden appearance, still barefoot in the snow. After a brief conversation, Abby informs him that they cannot be friends and departs, leaving Owen to resume his tree-striking exercise. Oh my, Owen is one scary dude. Shortly after, Owen observes Thomas exiting the building dressed in black and carrying a bag. Thomas heads to a store parking lot, where he breaks into a car and waits for the owner to return. When the owner returns with groceries and drives off, Thomas finally springs into action. Donning a mask, he kills the driver and drags him into the woods to hang him from a tree. Next, he slices the man's throat, collecting the blood in a jug. However, he accidentally spills some of it when he stumbles while picking it up. With a truck approaching, he hastily grabs the jug containing the remaining blood and heads back to the apartment building. Upon Owen's arrival home, he hears Thomas arguing with someone with a deep voice through the walls. The voice questions whether they should handle it themselves, to which Thomas responds that he might be getting careless due to exhaustion and possibly wants to get caught. The following day, the detective and several officers visit the school to ask questions, as the man murdered the previous night was a recent graduate. That evening, Owen is once again in the yard, playing with a Rubik's Cube. Abby approaches him once more, and after failing to persuade him to leave, she inquires about the Rubik's Cube. As Owen teaches her how to solve it, he asks her about her habit of going barefoot. Abby explains that she never feels cold. Aw, so cute. Owen and Abby are finally getting closer. After lending Abby the Rubik's Cube for the night, Owen heads back to his apartment while she continues to play outside. However, the cube slips from her hands when she begins to feel unwell. Abby seeks refuge in a nearby tunnel, calling out for help while feigning injury. It's Jack who discovers her and attempts to assist her, but when he lifts her up, Abby viciously attacks him. She shakes and strikes him several times before throwing him to the ground and draining his blood. Abby then snaps his neck to ensure he's dead before departing the scene. What? How can a 12-year-old do that? Shortly after, Owen is once again spying on his neighbors and notices that Jack is absent from his place. He overhears Thomas berating and insulting Abby for something she did, which Thomas now has to rectify. Owen also observes Thomas leaving the apartment hastily. Thomas's cleanup involves discovering Jack's body and disposing of it in the river, using a pole to submerge it deep underwater. The following morning, Owen discovers discovers the solved Rubik's Cube in the yard, now covered in snow. In the evening, Owen reconnects with Abby, and after introducing themselves, Abby reveals she's around 12 and doesn't know her exact birthday. Owen offers her the Rubik's Cube as a gift, which she declines. However, she agrees to teach him how to solve it, so they spend the evening together playing with the cube. The next day, during class, when a movie is being played, Owen takes the opportunity to learn Morse code. Kenny notices him and later, along with 2 other bullies, corners Owen in the bathroom. When Owen refuses to show him what he's been writing, Kenny becomes enraged, hitting Owen with a stick and taunting him with insults, leaving a scar on his cheek as a warning not to tell anyone. It's just heartbreaking seeing a child get bullied like this. Upon returning home, Owen lies to his mother, claiming he fell on the playground. After dinner, he meets Abby again and shows her that he's reading Romeo and Juliet for school. He also provides her with a Morse code key so they can communicate through the wall. Abby becomes concerned when she realizes Owen can hear her through the wall. When Owen asks about her parents, Abby mentions that her mother is deceased, but avoids answering Owen's questions about why her father was angry with her recently. After Owen confides in Abby about his parents' divorce, she notices his wound and learns the truth behind it. Disapproving of what she hears, Abby encourages Owen to stand up to the bullies. She assures him that if the knife isn't enough, she will protect him. Owen is hesitant, but Abby places her hand over his, emphasizing that she's stronger than she appears. Yeah, we've seen Abby in action. She is definitely strong. Back in their rooms, they begin communicating through the wall using Morse code. The next day, Owen approaches his gym teacher and enrolls in after-school strength training. Later, he takes some money from his mother's purse and treats Abby to an arcade visit, where he teaches her to play Mrs. Pac-Man. He then offers to buy her candy, which she initially declined. However, seeing Owen's disappointment at not being able to share his favorite treats, Abby accepts one, but ends up vomiting shortly after. She apologizes, but Owen reassures her with a comforting hug. A kid vomiting after eating candy, never seen before. Concerned, Abby questions Owens about his feelings towards her, to which he admits he likes her. She then asks him if he would still like her if she wasn't a girl, and Owen responds that he thinks he would. As they walk back to their building, Abby mentions her frequent relocation, while Owen expresses his desire to leave his troubled town. Just as they begin holding hands, they are interrupted by Owen's mother calling him in for dinner. The children part ways, wishing each other good night as they return to their respective apartments. At her place, Abby finds Thomas preparing to leave again out of necessity. She attempts to comfort him with a gentle touch on his face, which Thomas appreciates, but he still urges her not to see Owen anymore. Thomas departs and breaks into another car, hiding behind the back seat while waiting for the opportune moment to act. The driver picks up a friend who tosses his bag into the back seat without noticing Thomas. Eventually, they stop at a gas station, and the driver exits to make a purchase. While the friend changes the radio station, he spots Thomas in the back seat. Seizing the opportunity, Thomas attacks. Despite the victim's resistance, Thomas ultimately overpowers and kills him, with the struggle masked by the loud music. The car owner only becomes aware of the situation when Thomas moves to the driver's seat, starts the car, and drives away. Thomas really is a pro at doing this stuff. As the enraged car owner hurls a smoothie at the windshield, Thomas struggles to maintain control of the vehicle. The car veers off the road, tumbling into a ditch and overturning, trapping its occupants underneath. With the car's owner approaching and the police on their way, Thomas retrieves a bottle of acid from his bag and pours it over his face, altering his appearance. Meanwhile, back at the apartments, Owen and Abby are holding hands through the wall when Abby overhears news about a murder suspect hospitalized due to burn. She rushes to the hospital to see her father, but is denied access to the police-restricted area. Upon leaving, the receptionist notices Abby's bare feet and sympathizes with her, but Abby disappears before the receptionist can stop her. The receptionist decides to notify the detective about Abby, bringing us back to the story's beginning. Abby climbs the building to spy on Thomas through his window. When she taps on the glass, Thomas shows her he cannot speak, motioning for her to enter. They press their foreheads together, and Thomas offers his neck to Abby for sustenance, which she accepts. As he loses consciousness, his body slowly descends, falling into the snow-covered ground below. Shortly after, Abby appears at Owen's window. After waking him and instructing him not to look at her, Abby asks for permission to enter, which Owen grants. Abby undresses and joins Owen in bed, where he notices she feels cold. Owen questions how she got in, disbelieving her claim that she flew. Owen then asks Abby to be his girlfriend. Initially, Abby declines, stating she's not a girl, she's nothing. However, she changes her mind when Owen reassures her that nothing will change between them, and she places his hand on her cheek in acceptance. By morning, Owen finds himself alone with a note from Abby saying she must either leave to live or stay and die. Owen's gym teacher takes the class to a frozen lake for hockey and skating. Once again, Owen is confronted by his bullies. In self-defense, he grabs a metal pole, striking Kenny on the head and injuring his ear. The teacher is about to intervene, but is distracted by the sudden screams of other children who have discovered Jack's body in the lake. After Owen and his mother meet with the principal to discuss his actions, they return home, where they are visited by the detective wanting to ask him questions. Owen is confined to his room, and as he looks out the window, he observes police officers investigating Jack's apartment. He tries to communicate with Abby using Morse code, but she doesn't respond because the detective is now at her door. Seeing the detective through the peephole, Abby chooses not to answer, and the officer officer eventually departs. Abby's not just insanely strong, she's also really smart. The next day, after using the school gym equipment, Owen witnesses Kenny being bullied by his friend and his brother over his injured ear. His brother also takes Kenny's car keys, mocking him. In the evening, Owen meets with Abby and shares how he stood up for himself. Abby expresses pride in him and rewards him with a kiss on the cheek. Owen then takes Abby to an old abandoned apartment, previously shown to him by a teenage neighbor, unknown to any adults. Abby starts playing music and asks Owen what he wants to do. In response, Owen cuts his finger to initiate a blood pact. The scent of blood affects Abby, and despite her attempts to resist, she transforms into a more monstrous form, falling to the floor to consume the spilled blood. When Owen calls out to her, Abby tells him to leave, but it's she who suddenly dashes out and climbs a tree. Just then, Virginia walks by with her dog, followed closely by Larry. Abby jumps on Virginia as she approaches and begins feeding on her. However, Larry manages to push Abby off, and after a brief struggle, she flees. Shortly after, Owen watches as an ambulance takes Virginia away, and he tends to his finger, wrapping it with a bandage. Attempting to speak with his mother proves futile as she is fast asleep, so Owen calls his father instead, questioning the existence of evil people. Misinterpreting the question, his father believes Owen's mother is filling his head with troubling thoughts and promises to discuss it later, leaving Owen upset and alone. Owen decides to visit Abby, asking for permission to enter as she had done at his place. As they converse, Abby confirms Owen's suspicion. She's a vampire who needs blood to survive. She's remained 12 for a very long time, and Thomas was not her father. Among her collection of puzzle toys, Owen discovers an old photograph of Abby and Thomas. Abby appears the same age, but Thomas is depicted as a young boy, much like Owen. This frightens Owen, prompting him to try and leave, but Abby halts him, only allowing him to move again when he openly wonders about her intention. As he exits, Abby reminds him that she had previously stated they couldn't be friends. At the hospital, the detective interviews Larry and Virginia as part of their investigation. While he questions Larry, Virginia awakens, revealing her eyes have taken on a vampire's appearance. She notices the IV in her arm and removes it, consuming the donated blood from the wound just as a nurse enters and draws back the curtains, allowing sunlight to flood the room. The sunlight ignites Virginia, causing flames to rapidly spread throughout the room, engulfing both Virginia and the nurse. Meanwhile, Owen watches news coverage of the hospital fire while dining alone in his apartment, as his mother is away meeting with lawyers. Suddenly, there's a knock at his door. It's Abby, who asks for an invitation inside. Confused about why she can't simply enter, Abby demonstrates her need for a verbal permission. As soon as she steps inside, she begins bleeding from various parts of her body. Well, that bleeding was totally unexpected. Owen quickly catches on and verbally allows Abby inside before embracing her. While Abby showers, Owen tidies up the floor and discards her soiled clothes. He also starts playing music and suggests Abby can borrow a dress from his mom. Just then, Owen's mother returns home, prompting the kids to retreat to Owen's room, and Abby to exit through the window and return to her apartment. Later, after confirming his mother has fallen asleep, Owen visits Abby's place. He spends the night with her and wakes up on the floor to find a note from Abby, instructing him not to enter the bathroom. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Owen peeks through the peephole and spots the detective. He steps back, hoping to avoid detection, but inadvertently steps on a creaky floorboard, revealing his presence. The detective forcefully enters with his gun drawn, while Owen hides under a table. The detective searches the house, discovering the victim's wallets and Abby's note on the floor, prompting him to head towards the bathroom next. Inside, the detective discovers several blankets in the bathtub, which he removes to reveal Abby sleeping beneath them. As the detective attempts to bring in more light by removing the window boards, Owen intervenes just in time to prevent a burn from appearing on Abby's leg. Upon awakening, Abby lunges at the detective and feeds on him. The detective reaches out for Owen to help, but Owen can only shut the door and step back. When Abby emerges, she embraces Owen, informing him that she must leave before kissing him farewell. A few hours later, Owen watches tearfully from the window as Abby departs in a taxi, having concealed the detective's body in the abandoned room they frequented. The following day, Owen attends his swim class. His teacher departs the natatorium when summoned by one of the bullies to inspect a trash can fire, which Kenny and his friends ignited as part of a scheme. With the teacher outside, the four boys lock the door behind him and enter the pool area, instructing everyone to leave except for Owen. Owen attempts to flee through the locker room, but is captured by the bullies and brought back to the pool. Kenny's brother seizes him by the hair, proposing a challenge. If Owen can hold his breath underwater for 3 minutes, he'll only receive a minor cut with the knife. Otherwise, he'll lose an eye. Owen is submerged and held there, hearing strange noises like breaking glass and the boys scream. Blood begins to fill the pool, and even one of the bullies' heads falls into the water. After a moment, Owen manages to escape the pool and catches his breath, realizing Abby has returned and eliminated the bullies to rescue him. Oh, thank goodness Abby was there to save Owen. He was in some serious trouble. The following day, Owen is aboard a train, enjoying his favorite candy with a trunk placed in front of him. After presenting his ticket to the conductor, he taps on the trunk to send a message in Morse code, receiving a response from Abby inside. As the train rolls on, Owen reflects on the events that have reshaped his life. Despite the challenges they've faced, their bond remains unbroken. I rate this movie an 8.1 out of 10. Comment down below what you would rate it. Looks like this movie pill is starting to wear off. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Tap here to keep the effects going with this next movie, because who can stop at just one? And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your next movie dose is just a click away.